All right, here we go. Welcome into the show. You're watching the San Francisco 49ers Report. My name is Chase Sr. So glad all of you are here with me. And coming up, an NFL Week 11 preview as the San Francisco 49ers hit the road for another NFC West bout, this time against the Arizona Cardinals. And the Niners looking to sweep Arizona this year after the Cardinals had swept the Niners last year. Kickoff is set for Sunday, November 16th, 4:05 p.m. Eastern, 1:05 p.m. on the West Coast. Game taking place at Glendale, Arizona. The Niners, favorites right now, -2, with the over-under set at 48.5. Of course, as we always do, we'll be live right here on the Niners Report for another watch party. The best place to experience a Niners game day outside of being at the actual game. We'll do a pregame show. We'll be live during the game. They'll react to everything after the game as well. So don't forget to lock us in. Hit that sub button, but also hit that bell icon. Turn on your notifications. Therefore, anytime we go live, anytime I publish a video like this one, you will get that push notification. So you rewind back to week 3. A lot has changed between these two teams since the Niners edged Arizona 16-15 back in the early portion of the season. You have Jacoby Brissett now as the Cardinals quarterback over Kyler Murray because Kyler's hurt, although I kind of think that he's gotten benched because this Arizona offense has been better with the veteran Brissett, who sees the field a little bit better and is a better thrower as compared to Kyler, who's smaller, more agile, and more athletic. But I think the passing attack has really improved for Arizona here with Brissett at quarterback. For the Niners, first couple weeks of the year, you had Brock Purdy starting week 1, Mac Jones starting week 2, week 3, Brock Purdy in week 4. Then from there on out, after Purdy got re-injured, it's been the Mac Jones show. Of course, the Niners also in this game, losing Nick Bosa. And since week 3, their defense has kind of fallen off a cliff, especially given some particular matchups that we've seen. And so back in week 3, Niners beat Arizona 16-15. Eddie De Niro Pinheiro became a Niners legend in this game because he hit that game-winning field goal as the clock expired. Mac Jones and Kyle Shanahan able to engineer a beautiful and efficient, well-called, well-executed 10-play, 63-yard drive to win the game for the Niners to set up that Pinheiro game winner. Ricky Pearsall balled out in this game against that Arizona secondary that was a little bit shorthanded. 8 catches for 117 yards. Unfortunately, the following week, Pearsall got hurt. We haven't seen him since. Christian McCaffrey struggled a little bit on the ground, but like he's done all year, he's been terrific as far as all-purpose yards, and he leads the NFL in all-purpose yards. He's 13th in rushing, top 10 in receiving yards, and in this game against Jonathan Gannon's defense, 140 all-purpose. And Nick Bosa, as I mentioned early in that game, tearing his ACL, and that was really the beginning of all of these marquee Niners players getting hurt and a plethora of injuries happening since that point. When I scout Arizona, upon looking at the tape, what they've done all year, obviously a long sample size going into week 11, I think this offense has been better with Jacoby Brissett at quarterback. And I think that's backed up by Trey McBride playing well, Marvin Harrison playing well, especially with some of the timing routes. Kyler Murray and Marvin Harrison Jr. just could not connect. They did not have a rapport. But Brissett, a veteran quarterback who's been around the league for a long time and is solely a better pocket passer than Murray, has brought the best out of Marvin Harrison. And I think Harrison elevating is kind of an indictment on Kyler. This Cardinals defensive front, it is violent and they can get after the quarterback. Josh Sweat, a big free agent acquisition, reunited with Jonathan Gannon. They were together back in 2022 in Philadelphia when Josh Sweat had 11 sacks. It's him, but it's also everybody else. Some really good defensive personnel in the trenches for Arizona along the defensive line that has made that one of the top fronts in football, in my opinion. The Cardinals as a team, they are feisty. They are competitive. Do not let their record fool you. They had 5 straight losses in 1-score games. And you look at their schedule, right? They start off 2-0, 20-13 win against the Saints on the road, 27-22 win against the Carolina Panthers. They lose by 1 on a last-second field goal to the Niners. They lose on another last-second field goal the following week to the Seattle Seahawks. They were up big against Tennessee. DeMarcado was about to run it in for a touchdown, 70 yards, and he fumbled before the goal line. That then led to Tennessee coming back and winning their only game of the year. That was as weird and as a fluky loss as you will see at the NFL level. And then Jacoby Brissett gets the start against the Indianapolis Colts. That's a really good Colts team, one of the top teams in the AFC. And the Cardinals took that game down to the wire, but they lost 31-27 late. Then they lose against the Green Bay Packers 27-23 as Green Bay came back. They go on the road and they shellacked the Dallas Cowboys 27-17. Then they went on the road, and this game was pretty much over after the first quarter, after the first half, as the Seahawks blitzed them. But they did show some fight, and they made it somewhat respectable. 44-22 loss. But Seattle's been one of the hottest teams in football since the Niners went on the road and beat Seattle in week 1. And so the 49ers here this week cannot take this game lightly. Jonathan Gannon's teams of late have had success against Kyle Shanahan. They have played the Niners very tight. And if the Niners do take this game lightly, they will lose what is a huge game for the rest of their season. The 49ers have an opportunity here to really take control of the 2025 campaign. And if they want to make a postseason appearance, what they do over the next 5 weeks and 4 games could really decide whether this team makes it into the postseason or not. Because you look at the next 4 games over the next 5 weeks with the bye week sprinkled in there. The Niners are favored against the Cardinals despite being the road team. They should win this game despite their defense not being good and despite them having all these injuries, especially on defense, right? Week 12, they played the Panthers at home on Monday Night Football. The Panthers have been more competitive than a lot of people thought they were going to be in 2025, but you should win that game. Kyle Shanahan has historically struggled against Jim Schwartz's defenses, but you should beat the Cleveland Browns on the road. That is an awful Browns team. You have a Week 14 bye to really reset, get refreshed for a stretch run, and then you come out of the bye and you're at home against maybe the worst team in football, rivaling the Jets right now in the Tennessee Titans. So if you can go 4-0 here, you'll be a 10-4 football team going into the final month of the season. As for some Niners injury news, Brock Purdy has a chance to play. He's going to do a little bit more this week. He's been day-to-day for the last couple of months, right? And so the status of him now hasn't really changed from what we've seen and what he's done over the last few weeks because he's practiced in a limited fashion, but he's been dropping back. He's been doing drills. He's had shoulder pads on, a helmet. He's been making throws, but it's all about how that turf toe reacts. And Kyle Shanahan was asked on Monday what Purdy needs to do in order to be active and play in a game. And Shanahan said a couple of things. We want to see him have 3 aggressive practices in a row. And on top of that, he needs to respond well, and Brock Purdy needs to feel good. We'll see if that happens this week. Some good news, Ricky Pearsall is expected to practice this week. He has not played since injuring his PCL in week 4. This will give a big boost to this Niners passing attack because Ricky Pearsall is a really good player when he's able to stay healthy. He played in those 3+ games, got hurt week 4 against Jacksonville, and pretty much every time he was catching a pass, it was downfield, it was an explosive play, and it was a big play in the terms of moving the chains. 20 catches for 327 yards. Ricky Pearsall's an excellent player, and hopefully he can play against Arizona because that will help this Niners offense. Some Cardinals injuries to watch. Dadrian Taylor-Demerson dealing with an ankle injury. He left last week's game. Zay Jones, wide receiver, most likely tore his Achilles. It looked that way, at least on Sunday. Darius Robinson left the game with a groin. Walter Nolan, who made his debut against the Cowboys and played awesome, left last week's game against Seattle with a knee injury. There's a chance that he'll be able to play against San Francisco. Really like the player. Bam Knight, ankle. Jonah Williams, shoulder. And then Simi Fehoko dealing with an arm injury. So the Cardinals' injury list, somewhat long. You know what's crazy? The Niners actually haven't had some injuries for a couple of days. Who you got in this football game? SF for the 49ers, ARI for the Arizona Cardinals. Get those predictions in, and I'll give you my prediction coming up here in a few minutes. Coming up next here on the show, my keys to the game, top matchups to watch, what the 49ers must do in order to take down the Arizona Cardinals in Week 11. Today's 49ers report, though, brought to you by Prize Picks, the hard-hitting football action, even better with Prize Picks. The weather might be changing, but the feeling of being right, it never gets old. So keep the season rolling on Prize Picks by getting $50 instantly on lineups when you play your first $5. Prize Picks is the only app that offers stacks, meaning you can pick the same player up to 3 times in the same lineup. You want to pick more, for instance, on Christian McCaffrey's pass yards, receiving yards, rush yards, and touchdowns. You can do that. Now you can pick all of them in the same lineup only on Prize Picks. You want to pick more on Mac Jones's pass yards, rush yards, and touchdowns. You can do that only on Prize Picks. Follow other Prize Picks players directly on the app. Copy their lineups in one click. Whether it's a friend, a celebrity partner, or just somebody whose picks you like, hit the follow button and check out every lineup they create in the new feed tab on Prize Picks. How about a 3-pick power play for Sunday's game? Christian McCaffrey, more than 53.5 receiving yards. George Kittle, more than a half rushing or receiving touchdown. And then Trey McBride, more than 67.5 receiving yards. Download the Prize Picks app today. Use the code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, it's good to be right. To the back half of our preview. This is the San Francisco 49ers report. Chase Senior here with you. Another big NFC West test for the Niners here this week. Coming up, my keys to the game, top matchups to watch, what the Niners must do to win this ball game, and I'll give you my prediction. As we always like to do in informing the audience, let's take a look at how both teams stack up on both sides of the pill. On offense for Arizona, they've certainly struggled all year long, haven't had much continuity at the quarterback spot with Kyler Murray and Jacoby Brissett. The Niners know a thing or two about that, and they've just been an inconsistent team for the most part. 20th in points per game, 21st in yards per game, 26th in yards per play, 4th on third down, so they are good there. 19th in the red zone. On defense, I think they're a little bit better than what the numbers indicate here. I like the personnel up front, especially along that defensive line. 19th in points per game at 23.9. That's not a bad number by any means. 22nd in yards per game at 339.4. 16th in yards per play at 5.3. Middle of the road there. Also middle of the road in third down conversion rate. And the red zone defense has been good this season. 11th among the 32 teams with a red zone touchdown scoring percentage given up of 56.2%. For the Niners on offense, they need to score more points on offense and get better there just to make up for what is a lackluster defense. So they're 23rd in points per game at 22. They continue to move the football. 11th in yards per game at 356.2. The yards per play have gone up a little bit over the last couple of weeks to 5.5. That's 14th. They are 3rd on third downs. A big reason why the points per game is so low, the red zone offense all season, just like it was last year, has struggled. A 60% conversion rate there in the red zone as they only score touchdowns when they get inside the 20 at about a 60% clip. On defense, these numbers have started to falter a little bit just because of all of the injuries there. 15th in points per game at 23, 21st in yards per game, 21st in yards per play. On third downs, 20th at 40.5%. They were a top 10 red zone defense going into last week, and then the Rams were perfect inside the red area. And so now the Niners down to 15th with a red zone touchdown scoring percentage given up of 58.8%. As far as my keys to the game and matchups to watch, I think this is a huge key for the Niners in this game, but for the rest of the way, given this defense has really struggled to get after the quarterback, to cover on the back end, and to stop the run. Offense is going to have to carry this team. They're going to have to put this team on its shoulders. Kyle Shanahan, whoever's playing quarterback, George Kittle, this offensive line's going to have to rise up. The skill position players, depending on which skill position player is playing, get snaps, everybody's going to have to play better and execute better. They're going to have to find a way to be more consistent and efficient running the football. They're going to have to find ways to finish drives inside the red area with touchdowns. This offense needs to get to around 30 points per game for the rest of the year and hope that this defense can improve a little bit. But if the Niners offense can go on longer drives, give this defense some rest because they just lack a lot of talent. They're a couple players short right now. And you live with some of the ups and downs that we're going to see from this young defense. That can happen as long as the Niners offense can make up for it with hovering around 30 points per ball game for the rest of the season. Key to the game number 2 and a key talking point here. I want to see Robert Saleh make some personnel changes on defense. I've seen enough from a couple of players here over the last few weeks, and obviously the Niners and Saleh have tried to gauge where some of these players are and how they fit within the system. But here's some of the personnel changes I think Saleh, Kyle Shanahan, and the Niners should consider. Give Nick Martin some playing time. Utilize his athleticism. He plays with blazing speed. He can get after the quarterback as a blitzer, and he's better in coverage than Luke Gifford, who's a career special teamer. Start Marquise Siegel once again at safety over Jair Brown. Jair Brown shies away from contact. He can't cover. He's slow. And at this point, I just don't think he's a very good player. He played well during his rookie campaign under Steve Wilkes, who has developed DBs throughout his career. But for whatever reason, over the last couple of years, Jair Brown has really struggled. Marquise Siegel has been a healthy scratch the last couple of weeks, but he started every game up until that as a rookie 5th-round pick out of Kansas State. He runs 4.3, and while he gave up some plays downfield in coverage, oftentimes he was in a position to make a play. He just didn't finish on some of those plays. But if you're going to go with this youth movement and you don't make a move at the NFL trade deadline because you want to hold on to your draft picks and build for the future, why not play some of your young players? I also think the Niners should bench D. Winters. I have no idea what has happened to him this year. He started off playing really well. His coverage grade last year was really good. He has looked lost, and he's been burnt toast over the last few weeks. And in coverage against the run, he has killed this Niners team. Shoot, put Sebastian Valdez out there and play him ahead of Jordan Elliott. I'll talk more about that coming up here in a moment. I have not criticized Robert Saleh much this year because I think he's been one of the top defensive coordinators in football, especially given losing Nick Bosa, losing Fred Warner, all of the injuries on defense, and having to play a lot of young players. But Robert Saleh has to be better than he was against the Los Angeles Rams because Sean McVay outcoached him with his play calling against Saleh's play calling last week. It was a troubling defensive game for the Niners. The back seven played awful. The front could not get after the quarterback. No blitzes really paid off. Niners couldn't stop the run. And then you think about a couple of things that transpired during that football game. Whenever the Rams went with 2 or 3 tight end sets, Niners really struggled. They didn't adjust to that. And then in a goal line situation, really, we're going to have Malik Mustafa lined up against Davante Adams, who's still one of the top wide receivers in football, who now has 9 touchdowns on the year, who's a future Hall of Famer and a really good route runner. You're going to have Davante Adams matched up against a safety when Renardo Green or Diamador Lenore are not on a player like Davante Adams. Just doesn't make a lot of sense. For Kyle Shanahan needs to stop being so loyal. And I know that Kyle Shanahan sometimes is stuck in his ways, and I know that Shanahan can be very stubborn, and he doesn't make a lot of changes and adjustments. If he wants this team to make the playoffs, and if he wants the offense to be better, especially running the rock, Kyle Shanahan has to bench his favorite guy in Jake Brendel, and he has to start Matt Hennessy. Matt Hennessy is more athletic. Matt Hennessy is the better center. I think he gives you more athletic juice in the run game. I think he's better as a pass protector. And anytime I've seen Jake Brendel play this season, the interior pressure against him, against this Niners interior offensive line, has been very visible. But with Matt Hennessy out there, I actually think this Niners team has played some pretty solid football, and Hennessy has played better. Better pedigree coming out of college than Brendel. Brendel was a UDFA. Hennessy was a 3rd-round pick. I just want to see Kyle Shanahan stop being so loyal to players who are not as good as other players who you could be playing, and in turn, that will help you perform better, and there's pressure on this offense because you got to carry the squad. Number 5, have a clear plan and direction as an organization. That's one thing with the San Francisco 49ers right now that I don't understand. They don't have a clear plan. They don't have a clear direction. Here's what I mean by that. If the Niners are going to stand pat at the NFL trade deadline because they want to keep their draft picks and build for the future, then the Niners not playing their young players makes no sense. Play Nick Martin over Luke Gifford. Luke Gifford stinks and he can't cover, and Sean McVay took advantage of that on Sunday. Play Marquise Siegel over Jair Brown. He's more athletic than Jair, and I think he's going to give you more coverage-wise on that back end. Jordan Elliott, we know who he is at this point. Last couple of weeks, he's had some really bad penalties. Play Sebastian Valdez over him to see if he can be something and a building block for the future. Give Jordan Watkins, who has 4.3 speed, legitimate and more snaps at the wide receiver spot. The mixed messaging here from the Niners doesn't make sense. 6-4, they waved the flag at the deadline, but they still think that they can make the playoffs. They say, well, they want to build for the future. If you want to build for the future and you didn't make a move at the deadline, that told me everything that we need to know. That you gave up on the season because you don't think this year is your year. Well, if you don't think this year is your year, then try to figure out who can be a part of this team for future years. Other keys to the game. Stop running outside zone with Christian McCaffrey. It doesn't work. Get north-south, run more power, run more gap scheme. Against the Giants, you did that, found success. Against the Falcons, you did that, you found success. Stop running McCaffrey east-west, get him north-south. You know who's also been really good the last couple of weeks? Brian Robinson. Get him more carries and get creative with the personnel packages and usage. Use Christian McCaffrey in the slot. He's a mismatch there. Great route runner. He can burn linebackers and slot corners. Use two backs in the backfield to be more unpredictable with a run game that, for a large portion of this year, has really struggled. Avoid the back-breaking turnover, like Jawan Jennings, fumbling when the Niners are moving the ball. That happens in this game, it could really cost you. It really cost San Francisco against the Rams. If the Niners do not pass protect up front against this very good Cardinals defensive line, Niners will be cooked. And you know what's a concern for me? Trey McBride is one of the best and most dynamic tight ends in football going up against these linebackers. You saw what the Rams tight ends did. 3 of them going up against these Niners linebackers. When these backers were in coverage, they were burnt to a crisp. Trey McBride is better than any tight end on the Rams roster. And upon looking at the tape, the Cardinals are going to try to exploit that with Trey McBride. So predict the score. Niners, Cardinals, Sunday afternoon, Week 11, Glendale, Arizona. I think the Niners lose this game, 27-25. I picked them to lose against the Rams. I worried that they were going to get blown out by Los Angeles, and they did. In this game, I just don't like the matchup. I don't like the spot. Yes, the Niners are coming off an embarrassing loss against the Rams. The Cardinals got embarrassed too. But the Cardinals are the home team. They have played the Niners very well. They nearly beat the Niners back in Week 3. San Francisco can't get after the quarterback. They can't cover, and they can't stop the run. The Cardinals like to run the ball. Jacoby Brissett is a better passer than Kyler Murray. And so I think the Niners lose this game. I hope I'm wrong, but that's my final score prediction.